You wake to the faint hum of a violin, the kind that seems to float through the air without any clear source, as if carried by the morning fog itself. Your eyes open slowly, heavy with sleep, and for a moment you do not know where you are. The ceiling above you is old plaster, painted once, but now faded, cracked gently like a map of forgotten rivers. Soft yellow light seeps in from a crooked window. Paris. It hits you slowly. You're in Paris. Not the Paris you've seen in pictures or films, but a Paris alive with the hum of the 1920s, the kind of place where time feels looser and the nights stretch longer than the days. You feel warm, wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of tobacco, smoke, and lavender. The floorboards creak as you lift your head. You feel different, lighter, as if the person you were yesterday has dissolved somewhere between dreams and dawn. When you push yourself upright, your hair falls in loose curls around your shoulders. It takes only a second for you to notice that something is off. This isn't your hair. This isn't your room. This isn't your life. You stand and catch sight of yourself in the cracked mirror leaning against the wall. A young woman stares back at you. Bohemian, free-spirited, with paint smudged on the side of her cheek like she fell asleep after working all night. Her dress, your dress, is loose, flowing, patched in places, and handmade. Your breath catches as the truth settles in. Somehow, impossibly, you have woken up as someone else. And not just someone else, but a woman living in Paris during the height of the 1920s heroine craze, when art and addiction swirled through the city like smoke rising from cafe tables. Outside, you hear the distant rumble of cars, the soft clinking of bottles, and the laughter of neighbors who probably haven't slept since yesterday. Montparnasse, you think. The epicenter of painters, poets, dreamers, and wanderers. A place where the world's most restless souls gather in the hopes of being remembered. You walk to the window and push it open. A cool breeze rushes in, carrying the smell of fresh bread from the bakery downstairs, and something sharper, a bitter scent you can't name, but somehow know too well because the woman whose life you now inhabit knew it deeply. Down below, the narrow street is alive with movement. A woman in a green coat hurries past, her makeup smudged. A man with a guitar strapped across his back argues with someone who doesn't look entirely awake. A group of artists sit on the steps outside the cafe, sketchbooks open, cigarettes dangling between their fingers. It's a city that feels like it's breathing. It's a city that feels like it knows you. You turn back toward the room, trying to gather yourself. On the table sits a small notebook, open to a page filled with bold handwriting. You move closer, your heartbeat faint but steady. The words look familiar, as if your hand wrote them even though your mind doesn't remember. A date sits at the top of the page, April 1924. Below it, a name, Elise Lavalier. It must be you, or rather, the woman whose life you've woken up inside. The rest of the page is covered in hurried notes, appointments with other artists, ideas for paintings, addresses of cafés you've never heard of, and a few messy lines written almost angrily. One line stands out. If Henri doesn't return tonight, I'll know he's gone back to the den. You stare at the words, confused. Who is Henri? And what does she mean by the den? You flip back through the pages, reading fragments of a life that feels both intimate and distant. There are sketches of faces, mostly men, some smiling, others tired and hollow. There are half-written poems, lists of things to buy, reminders to visit certain galleries, and occasionally a sentence so emotional that it seems to pulse off the page. Many of them hint at something darker, something heavy pressing against this woman's joy, something tied to the hidden side of Paris, the addiction spreading quietly through the artist's circles, the stories whispered behind closed doors, the places where people went when the world became too much. You close the notebook and try to steady yourself. The floor feels cool beneath your feet. You know you cannot stay here forever, pretending you understand this life. You need answers. You need to find out why you're here and how you became Elise. But before you can even decide your next step, someone knocks on the door. It's a soft knock, almost hesitant. You freeze, unsure whether to answer. The knock comes again, louder this time. You walk toward the door slowly, your breath shallow. Elise. A voice calls softly from the other side. Are you awake? The voice is warm, familiar. Or at least familiar to her. Elise. You open the door, just enough to see a woman standing in the hallway. She is tall, elegant, wearing a long coat and a beret tilted to the side. Her eyes widen the moment she sees you. Mon Dieu, she whispers. You look like you haven't slept for days. Did Henri come back? Please tell me he did. You shake your head, unsure how to respond. The woman's expression shifts from worry to frustration. Then he's still at the den, she mutters under her breath. Elise, you can't keep waiting for him. You know what that place does to people. You told me yourself that you'd finally cut ties. The word den hangs in the air like smoke. You feel a subtle shiver run down your spine. You try to search your mind for memories that aren't yours. Nothing comes. The woman sighs when you stay silent. She steps past you into the room without asking, but it feels normal, as if this is something she does often. Look at this place, she mutters, brushing her hand across the scattered paintbrushes and cigarette butts. You need fresh air. Café Montrose is expecting us. You promised you'd show your new work today. She picks up one of the paintings leaned against the wall, a portrait of a man with intense eyes, his expression torn between longing and despair. You said this one was inspired by him, she says softly. You walk closer, studying the painting. The man's face is hauntingly familiar, even though you know you've never seen him. Something about him pulls at you. His eyes, his posture, the sadness carved into every line. Is this Henri? Is this the man she waited for? The woman notices the confusion in your expression. Elise, are you all right? She asks. You're acting strange even for you. You try to form words, but they feel stuck. She sighs again, softer this time. Come on. We don't have time. The cafe is waiting. She hands you a coat, a long, worn jacket that smells faintly of turpentine and the faint sweetness of old perfume. You slip it on, surprised at how natural it feels across your shoulders. The hallway outside the room is narrow, the wallpaper peeling in places. You follow her down the stairs, each step creaking under your weight. The farther you go, the more your senses fill with the energy of the building. Voices drift from the rooms. Laughter, arguments, someone singing opera off-key. When you reach the street, the sunlight is soft and golden, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. You feel like you're walking through a memory that never belonged to you. The woman beside you moves with purpose, guiding you through the morning crowd. People greet her with nods and smiles. Some call your name Elise, and you try to respond naturally, hoping your voice doesn't betray your confusion. You pass a group of young men painting on the sidewalk. One lifts his brush in greeting. Elise, still waiting for Henri to sober up? They laugh lightly, but there is concern hidden beneath the humor. Your companion quickly waves them off, her jaw tightening. Ignore them, she mutters quietly. People talk too much. You continue forward, letting the city wash over you. The cafés are already filling with artists carrying their dreams under their arms in paint-stained portfolios. The smell of fresh pastries mixes with cigarette smoke and the faint trace of something else. Something chemical, sharp, familiar to this era. The whisper of the Heroine Craze is everywhere, even if unspoken. You feel it in the hollow eyes of some faces you pass, in the tension in the voices, in the quiet desperation pressed beneath the city's laughter. As you walk, questions swirl in your mind. Who is Henri? What happened to Elise? Why are you here, in her life, at this moment in history? And what is waiting for you at Café Montrose? The woman beside you seems to sense your unease. You'll be fine, she says softly. Just try to breathe today. Let the world slow down. You always rush too much. You give a small nod, though you're not sure it's true. The cafe appears at the corner of the street. Warm light spilling out from its windows, the sound of conversation drifting through the open door. Inside, artists lean over cups of cheap coffee, arguing about color, light, and brushstrokes as if their lives depend on it. A piano plays softly in the back. Your companion guides you to a table where a man with thick glasses and a neatly trimmed mustache waits. Elise, he says with a smile. "We've been waiting for your new work." He gestures for you to sit. You do, feeling the weight of dozens of unspoken expectations settle on your shoulders. But before anything else can happen, the cafe door swings open sharply. A man stumbles inside, panting, his face pale. He looks around wildly until his eyes land on you. "Elise," he gasps. "It's Henri. They found him. You need to come. Now." A cold wave rushes through you. The cafe falls silent. Your companion grips your arm. The man's voice trembles when he speaks again. It's worse than before. And as you rise from your chair, your heart pounding, you realize that whatever brought you into this woman's life, it has only just begun. The room seems to warp around you as the man's words sink in. You don't know Henri, at least not in the way these people expect you to, but the name carries a weight that presses down on your chest. Everyone in the cafe is staring, their conversations frozen mid-sentence, their cups of coffee cooling untouched on the tables. For a moment, you simply stand there, unsure how to move, hoping someone else will step in and take the pressure off you. But the man at the door doesn't look away. His breathing is uneven, like he ran all the way here. His eyes hold something raw and frightened. Your companion squeezes your arm gently. "Come," she says, helping you out of your chair. She thanks the cafe owner without looking back and leads you toward the door. The man steps aside quickly, letting the two of you pass. As soon as you're outside, the morning air hits your face like a shock. The noise of Paris rushes back, car horns, chatter, footsteps, but somehow it all feels distant, muffled. You begin walking, the man guiding you from a few steps ahead, your companion staying close at your side. You try to keep your breathing even, though your pulse feels loud in your ears. "Where is he?" your companion asks the man, her voice tight. He glances back. "Near the river," he says. "Behind the old warehouse. Someone found him early this morning." Your companion curses softly under her breath. "I told him that place would ruin him." You follow silently, wishing you had even one memory to anchor you, something to help you understand why everyone cares so much about this man, why Elise cared enough to fill her notebook with his name, why a stranger would run across the city just to bring news of him. Whoever Henri is, he mattered, or at least he mattered to her. The streets become narrower as you continue. The cafes and boutiques give way to older buildings, industrial warehouses with soot-stained walls and broken windows. The smell changes too. Less bread and coffee, more damp earth and river water. The man leads you down a side alley, then across a small bridge. Below, the Seine reflects the gray sky, its surface rippling like silk in the breeze. You reach the back of an old warehouse. A fence leans crookedly to one side, barely holding together. Beyond it, a cluster of people stand in a loose circle. Some look worried. Others look like they wish they hadn't come. Your steps slow as you approach, dread pulling at your stomach. The crowd shifts when they see you. Someone whispers your name. Another person steps aside so you can pass. Your companion gives your hand a reassuring squeeze before letting go. At the center of the circle, a man sits slumped against the brick wall, his head resting limply to one side. His clothes are torn in places, his coat soaked from the damp ground. But it's his face that holds your attention, pale, familiar in a way that makes your breath catch. You've seen him in the painting, in Elise's strokes of color and shadow. The same eyes, the same sorrow carved across every angle of his expression. This must be Henri. A woman kneels beside him, checking his pulse. She looks up when you step closer. "He's alive," she says quietly, but barely awake. Her tone is calm, but her eyes tell you she's seen this before. Too many times. Henry's eyelids flutter at the sound of your voice, even though you haven't said anything yet. Something inside you pulls you forward. You kneel down beside him, your fingers shaking slightly as you touch his shoulder. His skin feels cold. His head tilts toward you. His lips part slightly. "Elise," he whispers. His voice is so faint that you barely catch it. His eyes open just a sliver, searching your face like he's afraid you might disappear. Your chest tightens. There's longing in his voice, something tender and bruised at the same time. You don't know what he expects, but the crowd around you seems to hold their breath, waiting for you to respond. You swallow hard. Henri, you say softly, hoping it's enough. His fingers twitch. You watch them rise slightly from the ground, as if he's reaching for something he can't quite grasp. The woman beside him gently lowers his hand. He needs rest, she murmurs, and warmth. Someone has to stay with him. Your companion steps forward immediately. We'll take him back, she says. Come on, help me lift him. Two men from the crowd join her. Together, they carefully raise Henri to his feet. He groans softly, unable to stand on his own, but he doesn't resist. You stand close enough to catch the faint scent of him, a mix of sweat, rainwater, and something bitter you don't recognize but know Elise would have. The kind of scent that tells a long story without any words. They begin carrying him back toward the street, and you walk alongside, uncertain but drawn in. The crowd slowly disperses, their murmurs blending into the sounds of the city. When you reach the bridge again, the breeze feels colder. Henry's breathing is shallow but steady. His head rests against your companion's shoulder, his eyes closed once more. He shouldn't go back to that place, your companion mutters, shaking her head. If he keeps doing this, she doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. The weight of it hangs in the air. The man who first brought the news finally stops walking. I have to get back, he says. Send word if anything changes. You thank him, or at least you hope the words come out right. He gives you an encouraging nod before disappearing into the crowd. You and your companion guide Henri through the neighborhood, though each step feels heavier than the last. You can't help but wonder what happened before you woke up in this life. What did Elise say to him? Did they fight? Did he leave in anger? Did she try to stop him? When you finally reach the building, your companion leads everyone upstairs. Henry's body feels limp, but he stirs when you step inside the room. Elise, he mumbles again. His voice cracks. You step closer to the bed as they lay him down. His eyes open slightly, and you see something in them. Fear, regret, maybe even shame. Your companion places a wet cloth on his forehead. Rest, she orders gently. You're safe here. Henry's gaze shifts back to you. He tries to lift his hand again, reaching for yours. You hesitate, but something in his expression makes you move closer. You take his hand lightly. His fingers wrap weakly around yours, as if that one small connection is the only thing keeping him grounded. For a moment, everything is silent. The noise of the city fades. The room feels very still, almost fragile. You came back, he whispers. You don't know how to answer. You can't tell him the truth, that you're not Elise, not really. That you don't remember him, that you don't know this life, this era, this struggle. That you woke up in a world that isn't yours. So you simply nod, hoping that's enough. His eyes drift closed again. His breathing evens out. The exhaustion pulls him into a restless sleep. Your companion steps beside you, her voice barely above a whisper. He listens to you more than anyone, she says. If anyone can pull him out of this, it's you. You look at Henri, feeling the weight of expectations you never agreed to carry. You want to help him, but you don't even know who you are here, who he is to you, what dangers lie ahead. Your companion touches your shoulder. I'm going to get supplies, she says. Stay with him. And Elise, whatever happens, don't let him go back to that place. She leaves before you can ask anything else. The room feels painfully quiet now. You sit beside Henri, watching him sleep, try to breathe through the uncertainty. The city hums outside the window. The notebook still lies on the table, its pages full of clues you haven't understood yet. You glance toward it, feeling a strange pull. You stand, walk to the table, and slowly open the notebook again. This time, a folded piece of paper slips out and falls to the floor. You pick it up, unfold it carefully, and your breath stops. It's a letter, written in Elise's handwriting, addressed to you, but the date at the top is for tomorrow. Your fingers tremble a little as you hold the letter, the paper thin and slightly curled at the corners as if it has already lived a small life of its own. The handwriting is elegant but uneven in places, like it was written in a hurry or under stress. You glance toward the bed where Henri sleeps, the rise and fall of his chest steady but fragile, and then back at the date on the letter. Tomorrow. How could Elise write something that hasn't happened yet? You swallow hard, unsure whether to open it or to put it back and pretend you never saw it. But curiosity wins. You carefully unfold the last crease and let your eyes drift to the first line. If you're reading this, it means something has gone wrong. You stop breathing for a moment. The room feels colder. You look around, half expecting someone to jump out or explain what is happening, but the apartment is completely still. Outside, you hear a distant car horn and the muffled footsteps of people walking below, living their own lives unaware of whatever secret you are holding in your hands. You keep reading. You won't remember everything. I wish I could change that, but I can't. You may not even remember me. If that's the case, please don't panic. Just follow the steps I've written. It's the only way to keep him safe. Your eyes move slowly across the page, your mind struggling to connect the dots. Elise wasn't writing to some stranger. She was writing to herself, or to you, or both. You don't know what to call it anymore, but it becomes painfully clear that the woman whose life you woke up and have been preparing for something, maybe even expecting it. Henri will look lost when you see him. He may even look broken. Don't let it fool you. He hides more strength than anyone realizes. But he also hides danger. Not for you, never for you, but for himself. You pause again, glancing at Henri across the room. His face looks softer in sleep, almost peaceful. It's hard to imagine him being dangerous, even to himself. But every time you've heard someone mention him, their voices carried fear, worry, something unsaid. You force yourself to keep reading. If he comes to you, if he says your name, stay close to him. The others won't understand. They never do. But you must not leave him alone. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not until everything is settled. He won't tell you the truth. He never does. That's why I had to write this. Your heart pounds a little faster. You look toward the door, as if your companion might return and explain everything. But the hallway is silent. You read the next line slowly, almost afraid to know what comes next. When the sun sets tomorrow, someone will come looking for him. Someone who blames him for things he didn't do. Someone dangerous. I tried to stop it, but I failed. So now it's up to you. The words blur slightly as your breath catches. Someone dangerous. Someone coming. Suddenly the apartment doesn't feel safe anymore. You look at the door again, listen for footsteps in the hall, but nothing stirs. Take him to the studio. Not the one in Montmartre, the one near the river. He'll know which one. He always does. Whatever you do, don't let him go without you. And if he asks about the painting, tell him you never finished it. You blink. The painting, the one in the notebook, the one you had seen earlier. What could it possibly matter in all this? And why lie about finishing it? There is one final paragraph. Please trust yourself, even if you don't trust your memories. I know you better than anyone. I know what you can handle. And I know you won't walk away, not when he needs you. Be careful. Be steady. And whatever happens, don't forget that the next step always begins with you. There is no signature, only a small sketch at the bottom. A bridge. Simple, almost childlike, but familiar. You fold the letter slowly, trying to steady your breathing. The sun shifts slightly through the window, casting new shadows across the room. Dust floats in the air, soft and silent, drifting like tiny secrets. For a long moment, you just stand there, feeling the weight of the letter settle into your chest. Then you hear a soft sound behind you, a quiet, weak exhale. You turn sharply. Henri is awake. His eyes barely open, but he's watching you. His gaze is hazy, like he's drifting between the present and some distant memory, but it's steady enough. He whispers, "You found it." You freeze. Your heartbeat stumbles. You don't know how he knows what you're holding, but he does. Maybe he always did. He tries to sit up, but the effort drains him almost instantly. You rush to his side and place a hand on his shoulder, guiding him back to the pillow. His breath comes out shaky, and for a moment he closes his eyes as if the world is spinning too fast. When he opens them again, they look clearer. "Did she tell you everything?" he asks, barely audible. You hesitate, unsure what to say. You don't even know what everything is. You shake your head slowly. Henri swallows hard, his jaw tightening as though he's fighting something inside himself. "I didn't want her involved in this," he whispers. "I didn't want you involved." You look at him closely, trying to read the truth in his expression. There is fear there, Yes, but there's also something tender, something protective that you don't fully understand yet. You're not safe here, he murmurs. Not anymore. Your stomach twists. You open your mouth to ask a question, but he lifts a hand weakly, signaling you to wait. Something is happening tomorrow, he says. Something I can't stop. His breathing grows unsteady, but he pushes through the words. You have to trust me, even if you don't remember why. Your fingers tighten around the folded letter still gripped in your hand. You feel its edges bite gently into your skin. He sees it and nods faintly. She wrote that for a reason. You sit on the edge of the bed, your heart thudding in your chest. Henri, you whisper, who's coming tomorrow? His eyes shift toward the window, like he expects someone to already be watching from the street below. He takes a slow breath, and then he whispers a name you don't recognize. But the moment he says it, the room seems to change. The air feels heavier. A chill slips across the back of your neck. Henry's hand reaches for yours again, clutching it gently, desperate. If they find me, he says, voice trembling, they'll take you too. Your breath catches. Then he says one more thing, soft, halting, but clear. They think I have something I never took. You stare at him, trying to make sense of his words. But before you can ask anything else, his eyes flutter shut again, his strength gone. His hand slips from yours. You sit there in the quiet room, the letter in your lap, his warning echoing inside your mind. The hum of Paris floats through the window, but feels distant, unreal. Tomorrow, someone coming, something taken, and you're caught in the center of a story you still don't understand. But the sun is already lowering in the sky, and tomorrow is getting closer. You sit by Henry's bedside long after his breathing evens out again, listening to the soft rhythm of it, trying to make sense of everything he said. The letter still lies folded on your lap, warm now from the heat of your hand. You trace the crease with your thumb, feeling the faint indentation where Elise pressed her pen into the paper. It's strange how a few lines of ink can change everything, how a fragile piece of paper can feel heavier than the whole city outside. You look toward the window, watching the curtains sway gently with a quiet breeze from the slightly cracked frame. Paris feels alive out there, full of laughter and music and secrets, but in this room the world feels paused, like it's waiting for your next move. You slip the letter back into the notebook and place it on the table. A faint rustle escapes as it settles, and you turn back toward Henri. His brow is still tense, even in sleep, as though he's fighting something in his dreams. You study him for a moment, searching his face for traces of the man Elise once knew. You don't know how much of what you're seeing belongs to her memory or your own emerging feelings. You only know he's in pain, and there's something haunting him that you don't yet understand. Your companion returns quietly. She sets a small cloth bag on the table and drops into the chair with a sigh. He didn't wake again, did he? She asks. You shake your head. She presses her hand to her forehead. He never should have gone back to that place. I told him it wasn't safe anymore. Not after everything that happened last summer. You lean forward. What happened last summer? Your companion lets out a long breath, eyes softening with a mix of sadness and frustration. It's a long story, she says, and not all of it is mine to tell. But Henri, he used to be brighter, happier. People adored him. His paintings were everywhere. He had a way of seeing the world that made everyone believe in something better. She pauses. Then someone accused him of stealing. Not money, not property, something more delicate. And even though he denied it, people started to whisper. And in Paris, whispers spread faster than truth. You feel your heart tighten. What do they say he took? She shakes her head. It's complicated. Her voice drifts into silence as she glances toward Henri. They blamed him because he was easy to blame. He was young, talented, and too trusting. He let the wrong people into his life. People who wanted things they couldn't create themselves. His world collapsed almost overnight. You watch Henry's face again, imagining him waking up each morning with fewer friends than the day before. You imagine the weight of disappointment pressing down on him, the slow unraveling of trust. Your companion continues, softer now. That's when all this started. The late nights, the disappearances, the people he shouldn't have been around. Something inside him broke, and he's been trying to piece himself together ever since. You feel a chill run through your spine. The letter Elise wrote, the warning about tomorrow, the fear in Henry's voice, it all feels connected. You want to ask more, to pull the threads apart and see what's hiding beneath, but something stops you. Maybe it's the way your companion's eyes look tired, like she's already said more than she should. So you let the silence settle again. The afternoon light slips slowly across the room, turning the edges of the walls golden. You watch shadows move, your mind wandering through all the unanswered questions. Who is coming tomorrow? What do they think Henri took? And why was Elise, yourself, somehow, so sure you'd forget everything? Your companion stands and begins preparing a small bowl of water and cloths. Here, she says gently, handing you one. Keep him cool. His fever's rising again. You dip the cloth and wring it out, then place it softly on Henry's forehead. The moment it touches his skin, he flinches, but then relaxes. You sit there for a long while, watching his breathing, adjusting the cloth, whispering quiet reassurances you hope might reach him, even in sleep. The connection between you and him feels strange, half inherited, half new. You want to help him, even if you don't fully know why. As daylight fades into early evening, Paris grows louder outside. Voices float up from the street, laughter drifting through open windows, the distant sound of a violin carried by the wind. Your companion lights a lamp, filling the room with a warm glow. You watch the flame flicker and dance, throwing soft shadows across the walls. Your gaze drifts back to the notebook. The pages hold sketches, names, small notes written in Elise's flowing script. Some of the drawings are quick and unfinished. Faces, bridges, the outline of a cathedral. One page catches your eye. It's a sketch of a street corner, narrow and crowded, with a small cafe on the corner and a lone figure sitting under the awning. Henri. You pick up the notebook and look closer. Elise must have drawn it from memory. The details are intimate. His expression soft, his posture relaxed, the faint smile he probably didn't realize he had. She knew him deeply, and now you're living inside the remnants of her world, piecing together a life she left behind. You close the notebook gently and place it back on the table. Eventually, your companion heads for the door. I need to check on the landlord downstairs, she says. He's been asking questions, and the last thing we need is him sticking his nose where it doesn't belong. She nods toward Henri. Stay with him. Call if he wakes. You nod, listening to her footsteps fade down the hall. For a moment, the room feels too quiet. You hear nothing but the soft hum of the lamp and Henry's faint breaths. You rise and walk to the window. The sky outside is deepening into evening, a soft purple spreading across the horizon. Street lamps flicker to life one by one, glowing like tiny stars scattered along the road. As you watch, you notice something strange. Across the street, a man stands partially hidden in the shadow of a doorway, his coat collar turned up, his posture too still to be casual. He isn't looking at the street or the lights. He's looking directly at your building. A sharp, cold feeling settles in your chest. You step back slightly, moving behind the curtain just enough to watch without being seen. The man doesn't move. His gaze is fixed on your window, as if he already knows exactly where you are. You breathe slowly, try not to panic. He's looking for someone, or waiting, and you have a sinking feeling it isn't a coincidence. You watch him for a long minute. Then a car passes, casting a wave of yellow light across the street. When the light fades, the man is gone. The doorway stands empty. You exhale shakily, but your heart continues pounding against your ribs. You glance toward Henri, half expecting him to wake and tell you everything you're afraid to know. But he sleeps on, unaware of the shadow that watched your window. You return to the bedside, your fingers brushing the folded letter again. Elise knew something was coming, and now, after seeing the man outside, you feel it too, that tomorrow isn't just another day in 1920s Paris. It's a day that could change everything. The lamp flickers. A soft knock echoes through the quiet apartment. You freeze. It's too soon for your companion to be back. The knock comes again, gentle but steady. Someone is waiting on the other side of the door. Someone who knows exactly where to find you. The longer you stayed in that small apartment, the more you began to notice things you had overlooked during the rush of the morning. A thin trail of charcoal dust lay along the edge of the windowsill, almost like someone had been grinding pigment there late into the night. A small note was tucked behind a vase, just a torn scrap of paper, folded twice, with a faint crease like someone had held it tightly for a long time before leaving it behind. You didn't know why, but your heart skipped at the sight of it. You didn't even open it right away. Instead, you walked around the room slowly, as if the walls might whisper clues if you listened closely enough. The mirror still stood there, propped on a loose nail, its surface catching the early afternoon light. For a moment, you just watched your own reflection, the soft curls, the smudged kohl, the lost expression that didn't feel like yours yet was undeniably the face you carried in 1920s Paris. You placed a hand against the glass, and the woman staring back at you looked like she wanted answers as much as you did. Paris outside sounded alive and restless, shoes on pavement, distant jazz from a cafe radio, passing conversations floating up like little ghosts from the street. When you finally unfolded the small note, your breath slowed. The handwriting was quick and tilted, like someone had written it in a hurry or with a trembling hand. It simply read, "Don't trust anyone from Montparnasse after midnight. Come alone when you're ready." No name, no explanation, no signature, just a message that felt more like a warning than an invitation. You stood there holding it between your fingers, wishing it would explain itself, but it remained just ink and paper and mystery. You slipped the note into the pocket of your skirt, unsure why you felt the need to keep it so close. Something about it felt important, like it was a thread in a larger tapestry you hadn't yet seen. When you left the apartment, the hallway felt cooler, as if someone had opened a window or recently walked through. You hurried down the steps, trying to shake the strange feeling that the note had brought. Outside, Paris greeted you with noise, perfume, cigarette smoke drifting from a balcony, and the warm glow of a city caught between chaos and creativity. You walked along the narrow street with no real destination except the instinct that pulled you forward. The sidewalks were crowded with artists carrying canvases, writers arguing about literature, musicians hauling violins, trumpets, saxophones. The whole city seemed to be humming with ideas, like everyone was chasing a dream or trying to outrun a nightmare. A woman wearing a deep green velvet dress glanced at you as she passed. She didn't smile, but her eyes lingered on you a moment longer than seemed normal. You weren't sure if she recognized you, or simply sensed something unusual about you. You kept walking, letting your feet guide you toward a small cafe on a corner, where chairs were scattered outside, as if someone had placed them without much thought. A faded awning offered shade to the people seated below it. You weren't sure why you stopped there, but something about the place felt familiar. The wooden door creaked as you pushed it open, and inside, the cafe was dim, warm, and filled with the soft murmur of quiet conversations. A few people looked up when you entered, but most quickly went back to their drinks and notebooks. You found a seat near the back, where a single candle flickered beside a small vase of wildflowers. The air smelled like fresh bread and roasted coffee beans. You rested your hands on the table, trying to calm the nervous energy that refused to settle. It was strange how, despite waking up in a different era, you didn't feel lost. Instead, you felt like something was pulling you along, like whatever had brought you here wasn't finished. As you waited, someone approached your table, their steps soft but deliberate. A man wearing a loose white shirt and dark suspenders stood beside you. He had a thin gold chain around his neck and a quiet, thoughtful gaze. His voice was gentle when he spoke. "You look like someone who hasn't slept," he said, not unkindly. "Long night." You forced a small smile, unsure what to say. He didn't seem dangerous, but you remembered the warning in the note and stayed cautious. He introduced himself as Julian, a painter who lived a few streets over. As he talked, you noticed faint streaks of dried paint on his fingers and the way he kept brushing his hair back, as if it always fell into his eyes. He seemed kind, but something in the way he kept glancing toward the window made you feel like he was watching for someone, or something. You didn't tell him much about yourself. You weren't even sure what story to give. But he talked easily, filling the silence with descriptions of Parisian nights, the art exhibitions, the Bohemian crowds, the secret gatherings in Montparnasse where ideas and rumors mixed freely. You asked him if he knew anything strange about the neighborhood recently, expecting him to laugh or brush off the question. But instead, his expression tightened just slightly, so subtle most people wouldn't have noticed. Strange, he repeated, lowering his voice. There's always something strange in Paris these days. People disappear for a night, come back changed. Some stories are just stories, but others, he didn't finish the sentence. He leaned back, his eyes searching your face carefully. Why do you ask? You didn't have an answer you could safely give, so you said nothing. He didn't push, but his silence afterward felt weighted, like he understood more than he wanted to admit. Before he could speak again, the cafe door opened with a sudden gust of cold air. A woman entered, a figure wrapped in a long dark coat, her hair pinned in a sleek 1920s twist. She scanned the room quickly, her eyes sharp and observant. When her gaze landed on you, something in her posture changed, almost imperceptibly, as if she recognized you. You froze, unsure whether to look away or hold her stare. She began walking toward your table with a calm, confident stride. Julian noticed her too. He shifted slightly, almost protectively, though he didn't know you. The cafe felt suddenly smaller, quieter, as she approached. When she reached your table, she stopped and placed a gloved hand on the chair opposite you. You shouldn't be here yet, she said softly, her voice calm but edged with warning. Not until you understand what you've stepped into. Your pulse quickened. Julian looked at you, confused and worried. You didn't know the woman, yet she clearly knew something, maybe about you, maybe about the note, maybe about the strange way you had woken up in this life that didn't belong to you. Before you could ask who she was, she leaned closer, lowering her voice until only you could hear. Montparnasse is not safe for you right now, and the people looking for you, they won't stop. She straightened again, her eyes carrying something between pity and urgency. Leave the cafe quietly. Don't let them see you. But before you could move, the door behind her opened again, and two unfamiliar men stepped inside, tall, well-dressed, moving with purpose. The woman's expression shifted instantly. They found you sooner than I expected, she whispered. And the cafe, once warm and peaceful, suddenly felt like the most dangerous place in all of Paris. The moment those two men stepped into the cafe, something in the air shifted. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a silent tightening, like the whole room suddenly held its breath. You watched them from the corner of your eye as they scanned the space with slow, deliberate turns of their heads. They didn't rush, but their attention swept over each table like they had a photograph of the person they were hunting memorized in the backs of their minds. And for reasons you still didn't understand, you knew they were hunting you. The woman who had warned you didn't sit down. She kept one hand lightly touching the back of the empty chair, as if she were ready to move at the slightest sign. Julian noticed the tension in your shoulders and leaned a little closer, whispering, "Do you know them?" You shook your head, but it didn't matter. Something about those men made it feel like knowing them wasn't the problem, being seen by them was. The woman gave the smallest nod toward the back door of the cafe, a door you hadn't even noticed until now. It blended into the wall behind you, half hidden by a faded tapestry. She didn't say anything, but the message was clear. That was your escape. Before you stood, you forced your breath to steady. The top button of your dress felt too tight. The candle on the table flickered as someone opened the main door again, letting in another gust of cold air. The cafe's quiet chatter continued, but beneath it was a subtle undercurrent, a sense that more than one person in the room had noticed the shift in mood. You wondered how many people here were tangled in the strange secrets of Paris, or if you were the only one caught in something that felt bigger than yourself. You got to your feet slowly, hoping not to draw attention. The woman didn't follow you, and for a moment it hurt, even though you didn't know her name. But maybe staying where she was would protect you in ways you didn't yet understand. When you moved toward the back, Julian stood up too. "If you're in trouble," he whispered, "you shouldn't go alone." You didn't have the heart to argue, especially with fear pressing against your ribs. You let him follow. As you slipped behind the tapestry, the back door creaked open and a cool breeze brushed your face. The hallway was narrow and dim, the kind of place where light struggled to reach. You hurried, Julian close behind, but just before you stepped into the alley, you heard one of the men say something in a low voice, not loud enough to catch the words, but enough to hear the urgency in his tone. They'd noticed movement. They were turning. You and Julian stepped out into a small cobblestone alleyway that smelled faintly of damp stone and old cigarettes. The sky above was turning a soft gray, hinting at rain later. You walked quickly, your steps echoing. Julian kept glancing behind, as if expecting the men to appear at any second. You didn't know where you were going, but your body moved with a strange sense of purpose, as if it knew the streets better than you did. Maybe this woman's life, the one you were living, carried instincts of its own. After several turns, the alley opened into a small square where a handful of street artists had set up easels. Their paint brushes moved quietly, their canvases filled with muted colors that softened the edges of reality. A saxophone player stood near a lamppost, playing a slow, haunting melody that drifted through the square like smoke. The music made the moment feel surreal, danger mixed with beauty. You paused, catching your breath. Julian leaned against the wall, his chest rising and falling quickly. "You need to tell me what's happening," he said softly. "Who were those men?" You didn't know how to answer. Should you tell him the truth, that you woke up in a different era, living a life that wasn't yours, carrying memories you couldn't make sense of? It sounded unbelievable even to you. But before you could say anything, a memory or maybe an echo flickered in your mind. A glimpse of a dimly lit room, the outline of a typewriter, and voices whispering about something dangerous. You didn't know if the memory belonged to the woman you were or to something else entirely. You pressed a hand to your forehead. "I don't know everything yet," you whispered, "but I think someone expects me to meet them in Montparnasse. And someone else wants to stop me before I get there." Julian's expression darkened, not with anger, but with worry. "Montparnasse after midnight," he said quietly, repeating the words you had found in the note. "People talk about strange things happening there. Artists disappearing for days. Some say it's nothing, just rumors. Others," he hesitated, "others say someone is gathering people, creative people, for reasons no one understands." You felt a shiver travel down your spine. Creative people. Paris of the 1920s was full of them. Painters, musicians, writers, dreamers. But why would someone target them? And why did you feel like you were already caught in the middle of it? Julian lowered his voice even more. "And lately, there's been talk about a woman. Someone who knows too much. Someone people are looking for." He paused. "When those men saw you, it was like they recognized something. You swallowed hard. You didn't want to be that woman. You didn't want to be part of anything dangerous. You only wanted to understand why you were here and what you were supposed to do." But Paris didn't feel like a place that gave easy answers. Across the square, an older artist watched you, an elderly man with soft eyes and a paintbrush held loosely in his hand. He tilted his head slightly, studying you with a strange mix of curiosity and recognition. When your eyes met, he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. You didn't know why, but something about that gesture made it feel like he knew more than anyone else in the square. Julian noticed your stare and followed your gaze. "That's Laurent," he whispered. "He's been painting here longer than anyone. People say he sees things others don't." Laurent turned back to his canvas, but his hand moved differently now, quicker, sharper. You felt drawn to him, unsure why. You walked toward him slowly. Julian followed, though he kept his distance. Laurent didn't look up when you reached him. He simply kept painting. On the canvas was a shadowed silhouette of a woman standing beneath a Parisian street lamp. Her face was half hidden, but the outline of her figure was unmistakable. It was you. Your breath hitched. Laurent finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "I wonder when you would come back," he said. You blinked. "Back?" He nodded once. "You've walked these streets before. Not in this moment, but in another. That's why they're searching for you." Your heartbeat thudded in your ears. Julian took a step closer, confused and tense. You stared at Laurent, trying to understand his words, trying to make sense of the painting, the warnings, the men in the cafe, the strange note, and the memory fragments that didn't feel like your own. Laurent dipped his brush into a darker shade and continued painting as he spoke. "You must remember what you left behind," he said softly. "Because they remember you." Your chest tightened. "Who remembers me?" you whispered. Laurent didn't answer. He stepped aside and let you see the painting again. This time, the shadow behind the painted woman was no longer just a shadow. It was a figure, standing very close, and it looked almost finished. Laurent's brush moved slowly, but every stroke felt heavy with meaning. You watched the painted figure behind the woman take clearer shape with each sweep of dark pigment. A tall silhouette, shoulders squared, head angled slightly downward as if watching her, or guarding her. The longer you stared, the more unsettling it felt, like the figure wasn't just part of the painting, but something pulled directly out of your own shadow. Julien shifted beside you, trying to see what had shaken you so deeply. "Laurent," Julien said carefully, "who is that supposed to be?" The old painter didn't answer right away. He just kept working, his fingers steady, his eyes focused. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a softness that didn't lessen the weight of his words. "It's not who he is," Laurent murmured. "It's what he wants." Your stomach tightened. The figure behind the woman in the painting seemed to lean forward now, the suggestion of a face barely visible in the strokes of charcoal black paint. Not a clear face, more of a presence. Familiar in a way that made your pulse quicken. You stepped back, the square spinning just slightly around you. The distant saxophone echoed off the narrow walls, the notes curling around your thoughts like smoke. For a moment you felt as if the music itself was trying to warn you, each low note trembling with tension. Julien reached out, lightly touching your arm. "You're pale. You should sit." You shook your head. The world felt too fragile to sit still. "Laurent," you whispered, "why are they searching for me? Why does that look like me?" The old painter finally looked up. His eyes were steady, filled with a calm you didn't understand. "Because you're the only one who walked away," he said quietly. You frowned. "Walked away from what?" Laurent wiped his brush on a stained cloth. "A group. A gathering." He paused, searching for the right words. "People like you, creative, restless, filled with ideas the city wanted to steal. Someone in Montparnasse started collecting them. Not for art, not for music, for something else." You felt Julien tense beside you, the air thickening again. "What does that mean?" Julien asked. Laurent's expression darkened with memory. "They called it an artistic society," he said. "A circle of visionaries. But it wasn't a circle, it was a cage. People who joined stopped being themselves. Their ideas changed. Their work changed." He lowered his voice. "And eventually they did too." Your chest tightened at the thought. Paris of the 1920s was famous for Bohemian artists and creative experiments. But this felt like something hidden beneath the glamour and freedom. Something that turned creativity into a trap. Laurent set the brush down. "You were one of them. For a while. Until something happened. Something that made you leave." He glanced at you again. But leaving didn't mean you were free. You staggered back a step, gripping the edge of the fountain behind you to steady yourself. A fresh wave of cold wind cut through the square. The saxophone music slowed, then stopped altogether. The silence after it felt too sharp, too deliberate. Before you could catch your breath, you noticed a small shift in the crowd. Two people you hadn't seen before, both dressed a little too neatly, standing a little too still, were watching you from across the square. The same kind of posture as the men in the cafe. Calm, focused, searching. Julien saw them too. His voice tightened. "We need to move." Laurent nodded, but didn't seem surprised. "They're not here to speak," he muttered. "Not with you." You took one last glance at the painting. The woman, your figure, stood beneath the street lamp, her face half hidden in light. Behind her, the shadowed figure waited, watching, close enough to reach out. You turned away, following Julien as he guided you out of the square and into another winding alleyway. The sounds of the market faded behind you, replaced by the soft echo of your footsteps. The alley smelled of old stone and dampness, the kind of place forgotten by the sun. You didn't speak. Neither did Julien. The silence felt fragile, like one loud word could shatter it. When you reached a quieter street, lined with shuttered windows and iron balconies, you finally spoke. He said, "I was part of a group, a gathering." You searched Julian's face. "Do you know anything about it?" Julian hesitated. Not because he didn't know, because he wasn't sure if he should tell you. "I've heard whispers," he confessed. "People called it La Société de l'Aube, the Society of Dawn. Poets, dancers, painters, all invited to create something new, something pure. But some said it wasn't about art at all. It was about control." The name felt familiar in a way that made your skin crawl. Dawn. Dawn was supposed to mean beginnings, light, hope. But this didn't feel like hope. This felt like someone twisting that light into something dangerous. You walked beside him, watching the city shift around you. Street lamps flickering awake, warm bakery lights glowing from windows, distant laughter rolling over rooftops. Paris looked peaceful, but you knew now that beneath its beauty lay something hidden, something organized, something searching. "Why would I have joined?" you asked, your voice barely above a whisper. Julian shook his head gently. "Maybe you didn't know what it was at first. People trust too easily when it comes with promises, especially artists. We all want inspiration, meaning, a place to belong." You felt a pang in your chest, because a life of creativity and belonging sounded exactly like something you might have wanted. Even now, even in this strange, new existence. A soft drizzle began to fall, misting the air with cool, silvery rain. You pulled your shawl tighter. Julian stepped closer to shield you from the wind. "There's someone you should talk to," he said. "Someone who used to be part of the society before it changed." You looked up at him. "Who?" "Her name is Camille. She's a writer." His expression tightened. "But she doesn't trust easily. And she won't meet you unless she believes you're not part of them anymore." You swallowed. "Where is she?" Julian hesitated. "That's the problem." Before you could ask, a sound echoed behind you. Footsteps. Quick ones. You turned sharply, your pulse leaping. At the far end of the street, a figure stood, barely visible in the rain-dimmed light. Tall, still, watching you with unmistakable purpose. Julian grabbed your hand. "Run." You didn't think. You just ran. The cobblestones were slick beneath your shoes, the rain making them shine like small mirrors. You could feel the figure gaining on you. Not close enough to catch you, but close enough to haunt your every step. The narrow street opened into a busier stretch, with people carrying umbrellas and rushing home. You blended into the crowd, breathless, heart-pounding. Julian pulled you into the entrance of an old bookstore with cracked windows and stacks of books visible through the glass. Inside, the air smelled like paper and dust. A bell above the door chimed softly as you entered. You pressed your back against the bookshelf, trying to steady your breathing. Julian peered through the window. "I think we lost him." But you weren't sure. The tension in your chest refused to ease. The shopkeeper, an elderly woman with silver hair pinned neatly at the back of her head, looked up from her desk. Her eyes moved between you and Julian. She studied your face a moment longer than expected, then nodded slightly, as if she understood something without needing to ask. Julian whispered, "We'll be safe here for a moment." You didn't feel safe. Not really, because somewhere outside, in the rain, in the shifting shadows of Paris, someone was still looking for you. And deep down, you felt the truth settling like a stone in your stomach. This wasn't just about a group, or a painting, or a forgotten memory. This was about why you woke up here, and why someone didn't want you remembering anything at all. The bookstore felt like a world tucked away from the rest of Paris, quiet, dim, and full of old paper that seemed to hold its own memories. You stood still, listening for footsteps outside, half convinced the figure from the street had followed you. Rain tapped softly against the windows, leaving streaks of silver that blurred the city beyond the glass. Everything felt too fragile, too close to shattering. The shopkeeper closed a thick ledger and slowly approached you with a calm, steady gaze. Her voice was gentle, almost warm. "You look like someone running from ghosts," she said. You opened your mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Julian stepped in. "We're just waiting out the rain," he said lightly, though his tight jaw gave away the truth. The woman didn't press further. Instead, she nodded as if she'd already decided to give you shelter, no matter the story you weren't ready to tell. She returned behind her desk, sorting a stack of worn books with delicate hands. But every so often, her eyes flicked back toward you, studying you with a quiet curiosity that felt strangely familiar, as if she recognized something in you, but was still trying to decide what it meant. You took a slow breath, trying to gather your thoughts. "Julian," you whispered, "we can't stay long." "I know," he murmured, "but you needed a moment to breathe." Your heartbeat slowly began to settle, though the unease still lingered like a shadow clinging too tightly. You walked between the shelves, fingers trailing along cracked book spines, philosophy, poetry, travel journals, all worn from years of hands that had reached for meaning. Every shelf seemed to whisper with the lives of the people who had touched them. You paused at a book with a faded blue cover. Its title was almost erased, but readable enough. Les Veilleurs de l'Aube, The Watchers of the Dawn. Dawn. Again. That same word threading through your day like a warning. Julian stepped beside you, reading the title over your shoulder. "That book," he whispered, "it's banned." "Banned?" You echoed. He nodded. The society didn't like it. The writer disappeared right after it was published. Your fingers tightened on the spine. "Do you think?" "I think nothing in your life right now is a coincidence," he whispered. Before you could pull the book off the shelf, the shopkeeper's voice floated from across the room. "That is not a book for late-night wanderers, my dear." You turned. She was watching you again, but this time, her eyes held something heavier. Knowledge, maybe, or worry. She walked toward you, her steps slow but sure. When she reached you, she placed her hand gently on the top of the book, as if guarding it. "You shouldn't read that here," she murmured. "Not until you understand what you're looking for." You swallowed. "And what am I looking for?" Her expression softened. "The truth," she said quietly. "But the truth is not always something people in this city want you to find." Julian stiffened. "Madam." She raised a hand, silencing him without a word. Then she looked at you once more, her eyes narrowing in quiet recognition. "You remind me of her," she whispered. "Who?" you asked. The shopkeeper hesitated before answering. "The woman who wrote that book. She came here once, long before it was published. She was frightened too. She said someone was following her, watching her every move." Your breath caught. "Did she say why?" The shopkeeper's voice lowered. "Because she found out the society wasn't what it claimed to be, and because she tried to warn others." Your stomach tightened. "What happened to her?" you breathed. The woman's eyes dimmed with sadness. "She vanished 3 days later. No one ever saw her again." The silence that followed felt suffocating. The shop felt smaller now, the walls a little closer. Julian's hand touched your elbow gently. "We should go," he whispered. You nodded, but before you stepped away, the shopkeeper reached under the desk and pulled out a small piece of folded paper. "If you're truly searching for answers," she whispered, "give this to Camille. She will know what it means." Your eyes widened. "You know her. One does not survive long in Paris by ignoring whispers," she said simply. "Camille hides because she must, but she can help you if she chooses to." She placed the folded paper in your hand, her touch lingering for just a moment. "Be careful. People who look for the truth often find danger before they find answers." You thanked her softly, your heart swelling with both hope and fear. Julian pushed the door open, the bell chiming as you stepped back into the rain-soaked evening. Miraculously, the street was empty. No sign of the figure. No footsteps. No shadow moving between the lampposts. The quiet felt unnerving, like the calm after a warning you didn't yet understand. "Let's head toward the river," Julian said. "Will be harder to follow in the crowds there." You walked beside him, clutching the folded paper tightly. Rain misted your hair and shawl, making the world shimmer under the lamplight. The Seine wasn't far. When you reached the bridge, the city lights reflected on the water like scattered stars. People walked by, laughing under umbrellas, their voices rising and fading as they passed. For a moment, Paris felt normal. For a moment, you felt almost safe. But then, across the river, you saw it. A silhouette. Still, watching, not moving, not hiding, just waiting. You stopped mid-step. Julian followed your gaze, and his breath caught. "It's the same height," he whispered. "Could be the same person." You couldn't look away. The figure stood partially in shadow, but the rain glinted off something metallic near the collar, maybe a button or an emblem. The wind carried a faint echo of a voice you couldn't quite hear, like a whisper lost before it reached you. The figure didn't approach, didn't follow, did nothing except watch you with eerie patience, as if time didn't matter, as if you weren't going anywhere they couldn't eventually reach. A chill ran through you. "They're not chasing anymore," you whispered. Julian swallowed hard. "No, they're waiting." Julian nodded. You tightened your hold on the folded paper from the bookshop. It felt suddenly heavier, like a key you didn't know how to use yet. You wondered what Camille would say when she saw it. You wondered what part of your past, or the woman's past, you were about to unlock. The rain grew colder, falling harder now. People hurried across the bridge, umbrellas bobbing like dark flowers. But you stood still, rooted to the spot, unable to look away from the watcher on the opposite bank. Every instinct inside you screamed to run. But another part whispered that running was pointless until you understood why they were watching you at all. The figure finally lifted a hand, only slightly, as if to acknowledge you. A gesture that felt too calm, too practiced, as if it wasn't a threat, but a message. Something in your mind flashed again, another memory that didn't feel like yours. A corridor, a dim light, a door closing behind you. Voices saying your name, or the woman's name. You weren't sure anymore. "Come on," Julian said urgently. "We can't stay here." You tore your gaze away, heart pounding, and followed him off the bridge. But even as you walked, you felt that same steady gaze burning into your back. Whoever they were, they didn't just want to find you. They wanted you to remember. And whatever you had forgotten was drawing closer, step by step, shadow by shadow. You covered the folded paper with your palm, afraid the rain would blur the ink. Because somewhere in that small, fragile note was the next piece of the truth. And someone in the city wanted it far more than you did. Someone who was now following you silently through the night. The air in the studio felt colder that night, colder than the winter breeze floating over Montmartre. You stood there for a long moment, trying to understand why the quiet felt so heavy. The canvases around you seemed to lean closer, as if waiting for something to happen. Even the cracked mirror in the corner showed your reflection with a strange dimness, like your face was fading into the shadows of the room. You tried to shake it off, telling yourself it was just exhaustion, just another night in Paris when sleep came late and thoughts came early. But something inside you whispered that the world was about to shift again, that the soft tremble in your chest meant trouble was near. You could still feel Armand's hand on your arm from earlier, the way he gripped you too tightly when he warned you not to trust anyone in the cafe. His eyes had darted around like he expected someone to jump from behind the door. You had never seen him nervous. For all the chaos of Paris, he always carried himself with calm confidence. But tonight he looked different, as if he knew something he couldn't say aloud. And when he told you again to be careful, it felt like he wasn't talking about the usual dangers of a bohemian life in the 1920s. His tone suggested something deeper, something buried beneath the noise of jazz clubs and painted streets. You leaned on the windowsill, staring down at the quiet street. The gas lamps glowed softly, turning the city golden for a moment. A woman walked by in a long coat, her heels tapping lightly on the wet stones. She looked up briefly, her face hidden beneath a dark hat. Her gaze lingered on your window too long, long enough for you to feel a strange chill run down your spine. You stepped back from the window, unsure why that small moment unsettled you. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was simply the way light played tricks late at night. But something told you she wasn't just a passerby. You turned and noticed the charcoals on your desk, the ones you used earlier when your hand moved on its own. The drawing was still there, still haunting, still impossible. A doorway, a bright light behind it, and a shadow waiting at the threshold. You didn't remember planning it. You barely remembered picking up the charcoal. But the image came out like it had been hiding inside you for years. You touched the lines with your fingertips, confused by the detail your half-awake mind somehow captured. The shape standing in the doorway wasn't clear, but it felt familiar, like someone you had been trying to remember all night. The city seemed louder suddenly, even though there was hardly any noise. Your heart beat faster as you replayed the message Armand whispered to you. They're looking for her again, and they think you know something. He didn't explain who they were or who her was, but you knew he wasn't talking about a friend or a neighbor. His voice carried the weight of something dangerous, something most people in Paris avoided talking about. A quiet rumor had circulated for months about a young woman who disappeared after becoming involved with a strange circle of artists, philosophers, and dreamers. Some said she left the city. Others said something happened to her. But every version of the story felt wrong. And for some reason, Armand thought you were connected. You walked toward the little table near the door, where you had left the folded letter. You hadn't opened it yet. It arrived earlier in the evening, delivered by a boy who spoke quickly in French you barely understood. But the moment you held the envelope, your hand trembled slightly. There was no name written on it, just a small symbol, a thin circle broken by one line. You had seen it carved lightly into a brick wall weeks ago, on a night when you couldn't sleep and wandered through the quiet corners of Paris. You didn't know what it meant then, and you still didn't now. Before you could open the letter, you heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Slow, careful, almost silent. You froze. The building was old, but the walls were thin enough to hear when neighbors passed by. These footsteps were too measured, too controlled. You held your breath, waiting for them to fade. Instead, they stopped right outside your door. You felt a shift in the air. You felt the weight of someone listening. Your pulse quickened as you reached for the small lamp on your desk, hoping its warm light would steady your thoughts. The footsteps didn't move. For a moment, you wondered if Armand returned to check on you again. But he always knocked twice, soft then loud. And this person didn't knock at all. Slowly, you stepped closer to the door, trying not to make a sound. You looked through the small gap between the door and its frame. You saw only the faint shadow of shoes, polished, unfamiliar, not the type worn by artists or dancers or poets who lived on your floor. The shadow shifted, as if the person turned slightly. You swallowed hard. Then, almost too suddenly, the footsteps walked away. You let out the breath you were holding, but you didn't relax. You waited for the steps to fade completely before moving again. You pressed your hand to your chest, trying to calm your racing heart. When you finally opened the letter, your fingers trembled. Inside was a single line written in dark ink. Midnight tomorrow. Montparnasse Cemetery. Don't go alone. That was all. No signature. No explanation. Just a place and a warning that felt both urgent and ominous. You stared at the handwriting, noticing how the ink strokes were clean and sharp, like the writer knew exactly what they wanted to say. Why send this to you? Who expected you to show up at a cemetery in the middle of the night? And why couldn't you go alone? Questions spun through your mind, each one pulling you deeper into a mystery you never asked to be part of. You folded the note again, but holding it felt heavier now, as if it carried more than just words. A sudden wind pushed through the window, scattering your sketches across the floor. You rushed to close it, but as you reached for the latch, you noticed something outside on the roof across from yours. A figure, standing completely still, facing your window. You couldn't make out their features, but their posture was too rigid, too deliberate. They didn't move when the wind passed. They didn't shift or step back. They just watched you. You stumbled away from the window as panic rose inside you. You blinked once, twice, hoping your tired eyes were playing tricks. But when you looked again, the figure was still there, silent and unmoving. The city lights flickered behind them, making their silhouette appear even darker. Your breath hitched, and you felt the edges of fear tighten around your ribs. Why were they watching you? How long had they been standing there? And were they connected to the letter, the footsteps, the strange symbol, or the missing woman Armand warned you about? Before you could gather another thought, the lights in your room flickered, dimmed, and then went out completely. The darkness swallowed everything. And in that thick silence, you heard it again, footsteps, this time inside your room. The darkness felt alive, as if the walls were breathing with you. You stood completely still, unable to tell where the footsteps were coming from. Your heart pounded so loudly it seemed like it echoed through the room, blending with the quiet creaks of the old wooden floor. You tried to speak, to say something, anything, but your voice felt trapped behind the fear rising in your throat. The air smelled faintly of dust and cold wind, and you felt a soft movement somewhere behind you, like someone shifting their weight slowly and purposefully. You didn't want to turn around. Every part of your body screamed for you to stay still, to stay silent, to pretend the darkness was empty. But the footsteps were too close now. You could hear breathing too, slow and controlled, the breath of someone who didn't want to be heard. Your fingers reached blindly along the desk, searching for something to hold on to, something to defend yourself with, even though you had no idea what kind of danger you were facing. Then, in an instant, a soft click echoed from the corner of the room. A faint glow appeared, just a tiny flame, probably a match. It lit up the shape of a person standing less than 2 arm lengths from you. Their face was still hidden in the shadows, but the matchlight reflected in their eyes for a split second. You instinctively stepped back, but your heel caught the edge of a sketchbook on the floor, and you almost fell. The match burned out before you could speak. Darkness swallowed the room again. You heard the person exhale softly, a calm, steady breath that somehow made everything worse. "Who's there?" you whispered. Your voice cracked slightly, and you hated how small it sounded. Silence stretched for a moment. Then a voice finally answered, low and familiar, though you couldn't place it. "Don't panic," the person said. "If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't be warning you." You froze. Warning you? About what? Before you could ask, the lights flickered back on, weakly at first, then fully bright. You blinked hard, your eyes adjusting. When your vision cleared, you saw him, Armand, standing by the bookshelf with a strange mix of fear and determination in his eyes. He looked different from earlier. His hair was disheveled, his coat dusted with something like ash or dried paint, and his hand was shaking slightly. "Armand," you breathed out. "What are you doing? You scare me." He didn't answer right away. He glanced toward the window, as if expecting the shadowy figure from the rooftop to still be watching. When he finally turned back to you, his expression tightened. "I didn't have a choice," he said. "I couldn't risk knocking. They were outside. They're still watching." You thought of the woman with the dark hat, the polished shoes outside your door, the figure on the rooftop. Your pulse quickened again. Who's watching us? And what do they want? Armand hesitated, then stepped closer. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "It's the same group she got tangled with. The one from the stories. The one everyone pretends doesn't exist." You felt a cold shiver. You'd heard rumors whispered in cafés, in dark corners of Montparnasse. Stories about a circle of people fascinated by dreams, symbols, visions, and strange experiments that blurred the line between art and something else. People said they met in hidden rooms and abandoned houses, that they believed creativity wasn't just an expression, but a doorway to something deeper. Some dismissed the stories as exaggerations, as the kind of myths that always float around Bohemian circles. But others swore those rumors were true. "And you think they're after me?" you asked. "I don't think," he said. "I know." You sank onto the edge of your bed, your legs suddenly too weak to hold you. "But why?" "I don't know anything." "I don't." Armand raised a hand gently. "You don't remember," he said softly. "But that doesn't mean you're not involved." You frowned at him. "What are you talking about? What would I not remember?" His eyes softened in a way that scared you more than any shadow in the room. "You were with her," he said quietly. "The night she disappeared. You were the last person she trusted." Your breath caught painfully. "That's impossible. I barely knew her. I only met her once at the cafe." "That's what you think," Armand said. "But someone wiped pieces of your memory. She trusted you with something important, something dangerous. And now they think you still have it." You stared at him, trying to process his words, but a strange, vibrating pressure filled your head, like your mind was pressing against something invisible. For a moment, you thought you heard her voice, a soft whisper, almost like a melody. It was gone as quickly as it came. Armand noticed the change in your expression. "You felt it, didn't you?" he asked, the memory trying to come back. You didn't know what to say. Your hands began to tremble, and you didn't try to hide it. "You need to leave the city," he continued. "Just for now. You're not safe here. And whatever they want, they won't stop until they get it. You shook your head slowly. I can't just leave. I don't even know what they want. I don't know what she gave me. I don't even know if any of this is real. It's real, Armand said firmly. You've been dreaming of that doorway, haven't you? The one you drew tonight. Your eyes widened. You didn't remember telling him about the drawing. How did you? Because she dreamed it too, he said. She was obsessed with it. Said it was connected to everything. Said it was the key. The room seemed to sway slightly as he spoke. You gripped the blankets beneath you, trying to ground yourself. And tomorrow, he added, you're going to the cemetery. Your head jerked up. What do you know about that? He sighed. Because I got the same letter. Before you could respond, a loud thud came from the hallway. Both of you froze. Another thud. Then the unmistakable sound of a door forced open, your neighbor's door. Voices murmured, low and tense. You recognized none of them. Armand's eyes darted to the window, then back to you. We don't have much time, he whispered. They're checking every room. He pulled you to your feet and guided you toward the back exit that led to the tiny fire escape. Armand, you whispered urgently. Where are we going? He looked at you with a mix of fear and something strangely hopeful. To someone who can tell you the truth, he said. Before they find you. The hallway went silent again. Then footsteps started moving toward your door. You grabbed Armand's hand, and the two of you stepped onto the fire escape, disappearing into the cold Paris night, just as your doorknob began to turn. You climbed down the fire escape carefully, the metal cold under your fingers, and the rain had softened to a steady drizzle. Paris at night looked different from above, a web of dark streets, glimmering puddles reflecting the gas lamps, and the occasional shadow that seemed to move too deliberately to be a passerby. Julian, or Armand, your mind still tangled over which name was real in the moment, led the way, his movements quick and precise. You tried not to slip on the wet metal as you descended, but your thoughts kept circling back to the letter, the doorway, and a shadowed figure that had watched you from across the bridge. You had no idea if you were running towards safety or into the center of whatever conspiracy had been tracing you since the moment you woke in this life. When your feet finally hit the cobblestones below, you realized you weren't alone. Across the street, in the weak glow of a lamp, a figure stood waiting. You froze. The person was partially hidden under a long coat, their head tilted down, hands tucked inside pockets, but even in that dim light, you recognized the stance from before. That same calm, deliberate patience. A chill ran down your spine. They weren't just following. You felt like you were being hunted, measured, and studied, each step of yours predicted before it even happened. Armand whispered sharply, "Move." Now. He grabbed your arm, pulling you toward a narrow alley that twisted behind an old bookshop. The closer you got, the more the city seemed to close around you. Walls narrowing, shadows stretching like fingers, the echo of distant footsteps bouncing between buildings. You wanted to ask who that figure was, but Armand didn't speak. He never had to. Fear and urgency radiated off him like heat. As you ran, your mind turned to the folded letter again. The note instructed you to go to Montparnasse Cemetery at midnight, warning you not to go alone. But now, confronted with another watcher, you began to suspect something more. What if this cemetery meeting wasn't just a meeting? What if it was a trap, and the person who sent the letter had manipulated you into walking straight into danger? The alley ended abruptly at a narrow stairwell that led up to a deserted rooftop. Rainwater ran off the edges, forming small puddles that reflected the dim lights of the city. You followed Armand up the stairs, breathless, heart-pounding. At the top, the view opened into a small terrace overlooking the streets below, and for a moment, it felt like you had escaped. But then the second plot twist hit. A sudden shout from below made both of you spin. The figure from the street had vanished from where you expected it. Instead, a woman emerged, tall and striking, with sharp features partially hidden under a hood. She carried herself with a confidence that immediately made your chest tighten. Her eyes locked onto yours, and when she spoke, her voice was calm, almost cold, but threaded with unmistakable urgency. "You shouldn't be here," she said. You swallowed, unsure if the words were a warning or a command. "Who are you?" you asked, but the words felt weak against the storm of tension that had taken over the terrace. The woman stepped closer, rain dripping from her hood. "Camille," Armand said, his voice low and tense. "She's the one who knows the truth." You blinked, confused. The truth about what? Camille's eyes flicked to the folded letter in your hand. Her gaze sharpened. "You don't understand, do you? You think they're after you, but they're after something else. Something you carry without knowing it." Your stomach tightened. You didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. "What do I carry?" you asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached in her coat and pulled out a small object, a delicate, circular pendant that shimmered in the rain. She held it up for you to see. "This," she said, "was supposed to be lost forever. But you found it, and now they know." Your breath caught. You didn't recognize the pendant exactly, but something deep inside it felt familiar, as if it belonged to a memory you couldn't quite reach. You tried to pull back, but Armand grabbed your shoulder firmly. "They'll kill for it," he said, voice tense. "Or worse." Camille's gaze hardened. "And they've already started." She nodded toward the street below. "There's more than one watcher tonight. They've surrounded the cemetery. If you go there, you won't be alone, and neither will your enemies." A cold shiver ran through you. The plan had shifted, the stakes had changed, and suddenly the cemetery meeting that seemed like the next step in your search for answers became something far more dangerous. You felt the weight of the folded letter in your hand, realizing that its instructions had been a lure. The sender might not have been a friend, or even neutral. Rain fell harder, pounding on the terrace. You clutched the pendant, pressing it against your chest. You could feel its cold metal through your shawl, but it was more than metal. It was a symbol of the life you hadn't fully remembered, of the secrets hidden in the shadows of Paris. And Camille's voice, calm but urgent, reminded you that time was running out. "They'll come for you," she said, her eyes scanning the dark streets. "And they won't wait for midnight. If you leave now, you may never get another chance to uncover the truth." The city below felt alive, crawling with invisible eyes. Every alley, every rooftop, every shadowed doorway seemed dangerous. You realized that what you had assumed was a simple night of mystery had escalated into a trap where every step mattered. Your pulse raced as Camille handed you the pendant. "Keep it safe. Protect it. Don't let them take it." Armand gripped your arm. "Do you understand? This isn't just about you anymore. Whatever is hidden in that pendant, it could change everything for the city, for everyone who's tangled in the society." You stared at the object, cold and heavy in your hand. Your mind reeled. Art, memory, hidden societies, shadowed watchers, vanished women. You had been caught in something far bigger than you could have imagined. The wind picked up, carrying the faint echo of footsteps behind the building. Not far, but close enough to remind you that danger wasn't waiting for midnight. It was already here. Camille's eyes locked on yours. "You have a choice," she said. "You can run and survive tonight, or you can face what's coming and uncover the truth. But if you do, nothing will be the same." You felt your heart tighten. The pendant in your hand felt heavier, almost alive. Every instinct screamed to run, but a deeper, more dangerous curiosity held you there. You knew that the night would decide more than just your fate. It would decide what part of this hidden Paris, this twisted underworld of artists and visionaries, you would survive to see. Armand stepped closer. "Whatever you choose," he said, "don't let them get it before you understand it." You looked down at the pendant again. The symbols carved into its surface seemed to shift under the dim light, whispering secrets you didn't yet understand. Somewhere deep in the shadows of the city, in the rain-slicked streets and forgotten alleyways, eyes were watching, waiting, planning. You took a deep breath, trying to steady yourself. You knew the next steps could change everything. The watchers weren't just observers anymore. They were participants. And whatever was hidden in that pendant had the power to reshape the path of your life, your memory, and the Bohemian world you had awakened into. The night pressed closer around you. Rain drummed harder. The city shimmered in cold reflections, and you realized with a sudden clarity that the events of the past hours, the notes, the drawings, the shadows, were all leading to one moment. A moment you couldn't avoid. And deep in your chest, a sense of dread settled alongside an undeniable spark of resolve. The truth was waiting at Montparnasse Cemetery, but so was the danger, and you weren't sure which would reach you first. Somewhere in the streets below, footsteps multiplied. They weren't just following, they were converging. And in that convergence, you sensed the full weight of what was coming. The night had never felt this alive, this dangerous. And you knew there was no turning back. Everything depended on the next step, and the shadows were waiting. The terrace felt impossibly high, the city stretching out beneath you like a web of flickering lights and darkened streets. Rain splashed against your shawl, soaking through the fabric and chilling your skin, but the cold hardly registered against the electric tension that had taken hold of your entire body. You held the pendant tightly, feeling its subtle weight press against your palm. Every instinct screamed that what it contained, whatever secret it carried, could change everything. If the watchers got it first, there might be no coming back. Armand glanced around nervously. We need to move now. Camille is right. They won't wait until midnight. They're surrounding the cemetery, watching every exit, every street. You hesitated, the pendant burning slightly in your hand, as if it sensed your uncertainty. And if we go anyway, you asked, your voice barely above a whisper. Armand's eyes darkened. Then we'll be stepping straight into their trap. But if we don't go, someone else will take it, and then no one can predict what will happen next. Camille stepped closer, her hood dripping rainwater. There's no turning back, she said, her voice low and sharp. They've already started moving, and they're counting on fear to stop you. But fear won't save you. It will only make it worse. You swallowed hard, feeling the first genuine twinge of panic prick your chest. Your legs were trembling, your fingers cold and slick from gripping the pendant. Yet in the same moment, a strange resolve filled you. You hadn't chosen this life, but it had chosen you. Somehow, through the letters, the drawings, the shadows, you had been dragged into a world far more dangerous than you could have imagined. And now, at the precipice of everything, you realized you couldn't turn away. Camille gestured toward a narrow stairway leading down to the alley. We'll take this way, she said. It's a less obvious route, but it will bring you closer to the cemetery without drawing attention. Move quickly. The descent was treacherous. Each step was slick with rain. Each turn of the stair creaked underfoot. You tried to ignore the shadows that seemed to move at the edges of your vision, twisting and stretching like living things. Every flicker of movement made your heart jump. You couldn't be sure if it was a trick of the light or one of the watchers. As you reached the alley, the city seemed to stretch endlessly before you. The streets were nearly empty, the few passers-by moving quickly, heads down, trying to avoid the rain. But you felt it, an invisible pressure closing in, eyes tracking your movement, calculating your path. The pendant in your hand seemed to vibrate faintly, as if warning you. Keep it covered, Camille whispered. They'll know what it is if they see it, and they'll kill to get it. You wrapped it in the folds of your shawl, pressing it to your chest. The metallic weight reassured and terrified you at the same time. It was more than a trinket. You could feel it pulsing with a strange energy, a power you didn't understand. Armand kept glancing behind you, scanning the alleys, counting the shadows. They're closer than we thought, he said. Move faster. You ran then, stepping carefully but quickly, the rain soaking your shoes, the cold pressing into your bones. The city felt different now. Every corner seemed alive, every window a potential hiding place for watchers. You tried to remember your way through Montparnasse, the streets twisting like a labyrinth in your memory. You had walked these paths before, in different circumstances, but never with the weight of life and death pressing down so hard. Finally, the cemetery appeared in the distance, its tall gates looming against the night sky. Stone angels and weathered statues stood like silent sentinels. Mist curled between the graves, and the faint glow of lanterns flickered through the fog. The place was beautiful in a haunting way, but it radiated menace now. You could feel in your chest a low thrum of tension that made your stomach twist. Camille stopped suddenly, holding up a hand. We're not alone, she whispered. You squinted through the mist and saw movement. More than one shadow, moving purposefully between the graves. They didn't run. They walked with precision, like predators circling. You realized that the watchers weren't just observing. They were orchestrating, preparing. Armand stepped beside you. This is worse than I thought, he said. They're expecting something. They know someone is coming. You pressed the pendant to your chest, feeling a strange warmth. Somehow, it connected you to something you couldn't yet name, but it made you aware of your role. Whatever was hidden inside it, whatever the society wanted, it was not just a relic. It was a key. And tonight, someone would try to take it, no matter what. The first figure stepped out from the shadows, tall and silent. You recognized the posture immediately. Polished shoes, long coat, deliberate movements. The same person from the rooftops, from the street, from before. Their face remained hidden, but their gaze was locked on you as they glided forward, crossing the damp earth between you and the cemetery gates. Your chest tightened. You wanted to run, to hide, but you knew that every step backward would only trap you further. Camille raised a hand, signaling you to stay calm. Wait, she whispered. We'll draw them in, but we need to keep them at bay until the others arrive. Others? Before you could ask, a low whistle echoed across the graves. From behind a mausoleum, a second figure emerged, and then a third. They moved with terrifying precision, surrounding the entrance and cutting off any path you might have taken. The mist swirled around them, and the lantern light flickered, casting long, distorted shadows. Armand tightened his grip on your arm. They've set the trap, he said. We have no choice but to go forward. Your stomach twisted, fear gnawing at the edges of your resolve. Yet in the same moment, a strange calm settled over you. You knew that turning back wasn't an option. You had to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing the full danger of the society, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. Camille gestured toward a narrow path between the gravestones. Move quietly, she said. We'll split up once we reach the central section. The others will meet us there. You followed, your steps careful not to alert the watchers. Every stone, every shadow seemed to whisper, testing your courage. You clutched the pendant, feeling it vibrate faintly, as if sensing the proximity of the hunters. Then, from behind a large monument, a voice called out, a voice you didn't recognize at first. Stop! You froze. The mist shifted, and a new figure emerged, wearing a hooded cloak. Their face was hidden, but the presence was undeniable, commanding. Camille hissed, No, it can't be. Your heart hammered. Another player had entered the night, another unknown factor in the dangerous game that had engulfed you. Whoever this was, their intentions were unclear. Friend? Foe? Or someone playing a deeper, deadlier game entirely? The watchers surrounding the cemetery didn't move, but their stillness was terrifying. They didn't need to act. They only needed to be present to make every decision you made feel perilous. Armand whispered, They're all connected. The society has been orchestrating this for decades. And you're the key to everything. You swallowed, pressing the pendant close. Its cold surface now seemed to hum faintly against your chest. Every instinct told you to run. Every ounce of curiosity told you to stay. The mist thickened, and the night seemed to lean in closer. The watchers shifted slightly, the new hooded figure stepping forward. The tension became unbearable. You realized then, with absolute clarity, that the true danger wasn't just the shadows behind you or the figures in front. It was the knowledge you carried, the pendant in your hand, and the truth that everyone else wanted to control. And in that moment, the first stone of the trap fell into place. The night was about to ignite into chaos, and nothing would be as it seemed. The watchers advanced, silently, inexorably, and the final confrontation had begun. The cemetery seemed to close in around you as you advanced, the fog thickening like a living curtain, wrapping the gravestones and statues in shadow. Each step made your heart pound harder, each footfall echoing too loudly in the stillness. You clutched the pendant against your chest, feeling a strange warmth radiating through your palm, as if it knew you were moments away from stepping into a pivotal moment. Every instinct screamed to stop, to turn around and escape into the night, but something deeper pulled you forward. This was no longer just a curiosity or an adventure. It was a confrontation with a hidden world that had always been just beyond your perception. Armand and Camille flanked you, moving with a fluid precision that suggested they had been trained for danger. Yet even they seemed tense, scanning the shadows as if expecting the watchers to appear from any corner, any crypt, any tombstone. "Keep close," Camille whispered. "They've been planning this for longer than you know. One wrong move, and—" Her words trailed off, heavy with implication. You didn't need her to finish. The weight of the unknown was enough. Ahead, the central section of the cemetery came into view, a small clearing surrounded by ancient tombs, their marble facades slick with rain. In the center, a faint light flickered, almost like a lantern, casting elongated shadows that danced across the ground. The moment your eyes fell on it, a jolt ran through you. It wasn't just the light. It was the figure standing beside it. A woman stepped forward from the glow, tall and poised, her face half hidden in the shadows but illuminated enough to reveal striking features that made your heart skip a beat. Her eyes were piercing, scanning the clearing with uncanny awareness. Then she spoke, her voice calm but cutting through the mist like a blade. "I've been waiting for you." You froze, recognizing something familiar in her tone, something that made your chest tighten. "You? Who are you?" you asked, though the words felt insufficient against the weight of the moment. The figure tilted her head, a faint smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "Names don't matter here," she said. "What matters is that you have it. The pendant. And they all know you do." A cold shiver ran through you. "They? Who knows? The society," she said simply. "They've been watching for decades. They've been shaping events, steering lives, and waiting for someone like you to awaken." You pressed the pendant harder against your chest, a strange pulse emanating from it. It was no longer just a trinket. It was a key, a symbol, something alive in your hand. "Awaken? I don't understand," you murmured, your voice trembling. She smiled faintly. "Of course you don't. That's the point. You've been living in fragments, in shadows of memory that were never fully yours. And now, they want the whole story, and they think you have it." Armin's grip on your arm tightened. "We can't stay here," he whispered urgently. "They've set this up. The letter, the watchers, the pendant. It's all a lure. But if we move carefully, we might be able to uncover the truth without losing it." Camille glanced toward the edge of the clearing. "We're surrounded," she said. "They've anticipated every approach. There's no path forward that doesn't bring them closer. You need to decide, step into the light or step back into the shadows." You took a trembling breath, feeling the weight of choice press against your mind. Every instinct screamed to run, but a deeper, more stubborn part of you whispered that the truth was here. If you didn't face it now, you might never understand the world you had awoken into. With a tentative step, you moved toward the light, Armand and Camille close behind. The figures around the clearing shifted subtly, their movements precise and deliberate. You realized then that you weren't just being watched, you were being guided, manipulated, tested. As you neared the central figure, the mist parted slightly, revealing something that made your stomach twist. Behind her, partially obscured by fog and shadows, were dozens of people. Not ordinary figures. Artists, philosophers, thinkers, dreamers, all wearing subtle symbols, masks or emblems that suggested membership in something older, something secret. You recognized some of the faces from cafés, from whispered conversations, from glimpses in the streets. And now they were here, watching, waiting, silent and expectant. The woman stepped closer, and you caught a glint of something metallic in her hand, a small dagger, its edge faintly catching the light. Your breath hitched. Why do you have that?" you asked, though the words felt absurd in the moment. "To test you," she said, "to see if you understand the stakes, to see if you're ready to take responsibility for what you carry. The pendant is more than a relic. It's a key, a map, and a warning all at once. And if it falls into the wrong hands," she let the words hang in the air, and the implication made your chest tighten with terror. Armand stepped forward, his voice firm. "We don't want conflict. We only want the truth." The woman's eyes flicked to him, sharp and calculating. "The truth isn't something you can simply take," she said. "It's something you earn. And sometimes it's something that chooses you, whether you're ready or not." You felt the pendant pulse again, warmer now, almost like it was alive with anticipation. The rain fell harder, drumming against the tombstones and the lantern light, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Then, from the edge of the clearing, a low murmur began, a sound that grew steadily, almost imperceptibly at first, then louder, more deliberate. The watchers were moving, shifting into formation. You realized that the central figure's dagger wasn't just a test. It was a signal. In whatever game you had stepped into, the stakes had just escalated dramatically. Camille grabbed your arm. They're planning to close the circle. Once they do, there's no turning back. You need to act. You swallowed, feeling the rain sting your eyes. Every step forward felt heavier, every heartbeat louder, every shadow more alive. The pendant throbbed in your hand, almost as if it knew what was coming, almost as if it was preparing you. And then the first unexpected twist struck. A sharp, metallic sound echoed from the far side of the cemetery, followed by a figure bursting through the fog. A young man, drenched, wild-eyed, clutching a bundle that radiated an energy similar to the pendant. "Stop!" he shouted, and the sound cut through the tension like lightning. "You don't understand. You can't give it to them." The crowd around the clearing froze, their silent precision faltering for a fraction of a second. Every eye turned toward the new figure, the energy between them crackling like static. Armand's grip on your shoulder tightened. "Who is that?" he whispered urgently. The young man dropped to his knees, presenting the bundle to you. "It's connected," he said, voice shaking with urgency. "The pendant, the letters, the society, it's all part of a chain. If they get it, everything changes. If you take it, you can finish what she started." The woman with the dagger took a cautious step back, her eyes narrowing. "You again," she muttered, clearly recognizing him. Your mind raced, trying to connect the dots. This was supposed to be a night of revelations, of uncovering the truth, but now there were layers you hadn't anticipated. The pendant, the hidden society, the young man, the dagger, the watcher surrounding you in the mist. The sky above cracked with a flash of lightning, illuminating the clearing, the statues, the faces of the watchers, the rain-slicked cobblestones. For a moment, everything froze, the tension, the fear, the anticipation. The pendant pulsed in your hand, warm and insistent, as if urging you forward. And then the young man's voice cut through the heavy silence again. "You have to choose. Now." Every instinct screamed to flee, to hide, to surrender, but deep inside, you knew the night had brought you here for a reason. The secrets, the shadows, the whispers of memory, they were all pointing to this exact moment. The watchers closed and slowly, deliberately, and the central figure raised her dagger once more. Camille pressed a hand to your back, guiding you forward. Armand's eyes met yours, fierce and unwavering. You took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the pendant, the bundle, and the responsibility pressing down on you. The night had become a labyrinth of danger and revelation, and stepping forward was the only way to survive and uncover the truth. Rain poured harder, fog twisted thicker, and the watchers advanced. The final confrontation had begun. Choices had to be made, alliances revealed, secrets exposed. And the path forward would determine not just your fate, but the fate of everyone tangled in this web of mystery, art, and danger. The city held its breath, and in the mist, the shadows waited. The clearing trembled with tension as all eyes locked on you. The watchers formed a tightening circle, their shadows stretching long across the stones, blending with the fog that rolled in heavier and colder than before. The warm pulse of the pendant against your palm felt almost like a heartbeat, as if it was urging you to move, to act, to decide. Rain streamed down your face, mixing with the unsteady breath that escaped your lips. The young man who had burst through the fog knelt in front of you, clutching the mysterious bundle to his chest as though it carried the same weight as your pendant, or maybe even more. The woman with the dagger held it low, angled, ready. Her presence alone made the air hum with danger. "This ends now," she said, her tone steady but sharp. "We cannot allow another cycle to begin. Hand over the pendant, and no one here will be harmed." But Armand stepped forward, shielding you slightly. "Enough with your riddles," he spat. "Tell her the truth. Tell all of us why she was dragged into this." Camille's voice cut softer but firm. "You owe her that." The woman's expression didn't change at first, but her eyes flickered, something like regret, or maybe memory. She lowered the dagger, just a fraction, enough to draw a thin breath of relief from you, but not enough to release the danger surrounding you. "She was chosen," she said finally, "long before tonight, long before the pendant came into her hands. It wasn't chance. It wasn't luck. It was a promise made by someone she trusted." Your breath caught. "A promise? By who?" The woman turned slightly, pointing through the fog, not to a person but to a tombstone worn smooth by time. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the name etched faintly into the stone. You stepped closer, heart pounding. The letters were faded but still readable. It was your mother's name. Your chest tightened. The pendant trembled in your grip. A rush of memories, scents, and soft lullabies seemed to rise from somewhere deep inside you. She was part of this?" You whispered, barely able to form the words. The woman nodded slowly. She saw it before any of us. She knew the society couldn't keep its balance forever. She believed someone would rise with enough clarity to break the cycle. She prepared you, even if you don't remember. She believed you'd return. The young man lifted his bundle, and she left more than the pendant. She left this. With trembling fingers, you opened the fabric. Inside was a small journal, weathered and stained with time, its pages filled with delicate handwriting that felt painfully familiar. Each page brimmed with sketches, notes, and symbols you'd seen scattered throughout the city, scribbled on cafe tablets, etched in alley walls, hummed in late-night whispered poetry. It was a map of everything happening around you, drawn long before you were old enough to understand its meaning. Your mother had been watching the society, studying them, fighting them quietly, and now her legacy sat in your hands. Before you could speak, the circle of watchers stirred. They stepped closer, their faces half shrouded by masks or shadows. Some looked fearful, others eager. One stepped forward, voice trembling as he said, "If she holds the map, then she chooses the next direction. She decides if the society falls or rises." The woman with the dagger stiffened. "Careful. We cannot let chaos replace order." But the young man shook his head. "Order is what trapped us. Order is what started this cycle." Armand turned to you. "You've seen enough to know that staying quiet won't save you. But choosing blindly won't save any of us. What do you feel?" You swallow hard. The rain softened, falling in quieter streaks across the stones. You lifted the pendant and the journal together. The warmth from the pendant intensified, almost glowing against the soaked pages. Something in your chest settled, a deep, quiet certainty. "This ends tonight," you said softly, "but not the way you expect." The woman's grip tightened on her dagger. "What are you doing?" You opened the journal to the first page. There, in your mother's handwriting, a simple line curved across the top. "The truth doesn't belong to one, it belongs to all." Then everything clicked. All the tension, the secrecy, the fear, it existed because the society held the truth hostage. They controlled information, guided movements, shaped destinies. But the journal didn't belong locked behind their masks. It wasn't a weapon to be passed from one powerful hand to another. It was a guide meant to be shared. You tore the first page free and held it up. The watchers flinched as though the act itself broke a sacred boundary. "What are you doing?" the woman demanded again. "Letting it go," you said, voice steady, and you released the page. The wind caught it immediately. The rain-plastered sheet spun through the clearing, catching lamplight and lantern glow, drifting like a soft challenge through the circle of figures. One watcher moved to catch it, then stopped, staring at the words. Another step closer. Then another. The journal wasn't a key to control. It was a key to expose. To break the hold the society had maintained. The woman lunged forward, but Armand blocked her path. Camille stepped beside him, her stance unshakable. "You can't stop this," Camille said. "She isn't choosing a side. She's choosing the truth." The circle began to break. Watchers moved away from the woman, dissolving the formation. Some bowed their heads. Others whispered among themselves. A few stepped forward, offering gentle nods toward you, as if finally understanding what your mother had seen all along. The pendant dimmed, as if its purpose was nearly fulfilled. The woman with the dagger looked around, realizing the power she once held was slipping through her fingers like water. She lowered the blade completely, her voice cracking for the first time. "You don't know what you've started. And neither did you," you replied quietly. You were all following a map none of you had read fully. Rain washed over the clearing as silence fell. It felt like the world itself was exhaling. The tension that had twisted your chest for what felt like hours softened, leaving behind something gentler. Relief, grief, understanding. But just as you took your first breath of calm, the young man stiffened. His eyes widened, staring past you into the deeper fog behind the tombstones. "Wait," he whispered. "Someone else is here." Armand tensed. Camille reached for your arm. The pendant flickered once more, sharper, harsher, like a warning instead of a guide. Footsteps echoed, slow, steady, deliberate. A silhouette emerged from the mist, taller than the others, carrying something you couldn't quite see. Every watcher in the clearing backed away instinctively, their confidence dissolving into nervous glances. The woman with the dagger whispered, "No, it can't be." But the figure kept advancing, and when they stepped fully into the light, your breath caught in your throat. You recognized them. It was someone you thought you'd never see again. Someone who shouldn't have known anything about Paris, the society, or your mother's secrets. Someone whose presence here shattered everything you thought you understood. "Hello," the figure said softly, their voice unmistakably familiar. "You didn't think you'd finish this without me, did you?" The clearing turned silent again, colder than before, and you realized the story wasn't ending. Something far bigger had just begun. The moment that familiar voice drifted through the fog, the entire clearing seemed to freeze. You felt your heart lift and drop at the same time, as if hope and fear had collided in your chest. The figure stepped closer, the lantern light revealing the face you had not seen in years. Someone you had lost long before Paris, long before the society, long before the strange journey that had dragged you into the heart of 1920s mystery. Their presence alone felt impossible. Yet there they were, real enough that the wet stones echoed under their footsteps. You didn't know whether to move toward them or to step back. But they smiled, soft and tired, as if they had walked farther than any of you could imagine. "I came because your mother asked me to," they said, and your throat tightened instantly. Hearing her name again in this strange place carried a weight that settled deep inside you. She didn't want you to face this alone. A long silence stretched over the circle of watchers, broken only by the rain ticking softly against the lantern glass. Even the woman with the dagger lowered her eyes, as though she knew something had shifted in a way no one could argue with. Your hands, still gripping the journal and the pendant, trembled quietly. All your life, you had wondered why you always felt slightly out of place, caught between worlds you could never fully explain. And now the answer was standing inches away. Armand stepped closer to you, not aggressively, just protectively. "Who are you to her?" he asked, trying to understand the sudden shift in energy. "They are family," you said softly, and the words seemed to unlock something in the air. It wasn't just the answer. It was the truth that had been buried deeper than the society's secrets, deeper than the symbols carved around Paris, deeper than anything your memory had protected. And saying it aloud finally made it real. Camille let out a slow breath, as if she had been holding it for minutes. "If that's true," she whispered, "then everything she predicted, everything she wrote." She looked at the journal in your hand with new eyes. "It was meant to guide all of us, not to divide us." Your familiar figure nodded. Your mother knew the society wasn't evil, just lost. She believed people can forget why they started something good. Power can twist it. Fear can poison it. But she believed truth could heal it if given freely. The watchers listened, their expressions softening, their fear melting into curiosity. For the first time, the clearing didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like a gathering that had been waiting decades to happen. The woman with the dagger stepped forward slowly. The rain had washed the sharpness from her expression. "If what you say is true," she murmured, "then we owe your mother more than we ever understood. And we owe you a chance to finish what she started." You felt a warmth inside you, not the magic of the pendant, but something more human, more grounding. It was the feeling that comes when the unknown finally stops being a threat and becomes something you can touch, understand, and maybe even forgive. Armand glanced at you carefully. "What do you want to do now? What happens next?" It was a fair question. You had just broken the society's biggest tradition, scattered its secrets into the world, and rewritten the rules in the process. But surprisingly, the uncertainty didn't scare you anymore. The pendant no longer pulsed with warnings or hidden messages. It felt calm now, resting in your palm like an old stone warmed by sunlight, as if its purpose had been fulfilled. You opened your mother's journal again, flipping through pages filled with symbols, notes about Paris, and small sketches of places you recognized: Montmartre, quiet bridges, cafe corners, old shops tucked into crooked streets. But near the end, her handwriting shifted, becoming gentler, more personal. A final entry caught your eye. "If she must choose a path, let it be her own. Not the society's, not mine, not the past's. Her own." Tears welled slowly, blurring the ink. You closed the book and held it close to your chest. "I want the truth shared," you said finally. "Not controlled, not hidden. Paris deserves to know what the society actually is. And you all deserve to build something new, something honest. If that's what you want." The watchers exchanged glances. Some nodded. Some simply looked relieved, as if they had been waiting for someone to say those words aloud. The woman with the dagger lowered her weapon fully and gently placed it on the stones, letting the rain wash over its blade. A gesture of peace, not surrender. Your familiar figure stepped closer and rested a hand on your shoulder. Their touch anchored you. Your mother believed in balance, not secrecy. She would be proud of you. Something in you loosened at those words. A knot you had carried for years quietly came undone. As the group began to disperse slowly, the tension eased, replaced by a humble sense of beginning. Armand, Camille, and the young man with the bundle remained beside you. They watched the watchers fade into the fog, each heading toward the city with a new sense of purpose. Armand nodded thoughtfully. "Paris is changing," he said, "and so are we." Camille gave a small, warm smile. "You brought light into something that had been dark for too long." "You didn't do it alone," the young man added gently. "But you were the one who dared to start." You felt the truth in his words. What you did wasn't perfect or heroic. It wasn't planned or calculated. It was human, messy, emotional, full of doubt. And maybe that was why it worked. Paris in the 1920s was a place of new beginnings, of artists and dreamers and wanderers searching for meaning. And now, somehow, you had become one of them. A Bohemian woman reshaping her own path in a city that thrived on reinvention. Your familiar figure squeezed your shoulder lightly. "It's time to return," they said. You looked toward the city, its lights glowing softly through the rain, reflecting off wet cobblestones and quiet rooftops. The night didn't feel threatening anymore. It felt full of possibilities. "What happens now?" you asked quietly. They smiled. "Now, you live. You walk into Paris as yourself, not as someone chosen, not as someone hunted, not as someone trapped. Just you." The simplicity of the answer felt right. You took one last look at the clearing, at the place where fear had lived and where truth had finally taken its first breath of freedom. Then you turned toward the city. As you walked away with your companions beside you, the fog began to lift. The rain softened to a whisper, and the pendant dimmed for the final time, fading into a simple stone. No glow, no pulse, just a reminder of a journey now complete. Paris stretched before you, alive with music, laughter, art, and the quiet promise of a new beginning. The heroine of the city's hidden mystery was returning, not as a legend, but as a human being ready to write the next chapter of her life. And as you stepped into the warm lights of Montmartre, you knew the story you had just lived through would stay with you forever, not as a burden, but as a gentle reminder that truth, shared freely, can change the world one honest choice at a time. The night closed softly behind you, and the new day waited ahead, bright and wide open.